What happens when fate brings two strangers together at their most vulnerable moments, and hidden dangers lurk just around the corner? Tu Diem collapses on a rainy street, rescued by a compassionate stranger named Vuong, who offers her shelter and care when she has nowhere else to go. Meanwhile, Toan remains unaware that the woman he trusts most, Mai Huong, is weaving a dangerous trap around him. Dive into this gripping story of unexpected kindness, hidden betrayal, and fragile new beginnings. Don't forget to subscribe and join us as we unravel their intertwined destinies. Let's get started. The late afternoon sky was painted in a dull gray, with a fine drizzle falling steadily over the quiet street. Tu Diem walked slowly along the cracked sidewalk, her steps unsteady, her face pale as if all the color had been drained from it. She hadn't eaten a proper meal all day, her body weakened not only by hunger but also by the emotional weight she had been carrying for days. The cold breeze cut through her thin clothes, making her shiver. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to keep warm, yet every step felt heavier than the last. Her vision blurred, and the world around her began to sway. The sound of passing motorbikes seemed distant, muffled, as if she were underwater. Then, in a single fragile moment, her knees gave way. The last thing she saw was the wet pavement rushing up to meet her before everything turned black. At that exact moment, Vuong, a man in his early 30s, happened to be walking down the same street. The sight of a young woman collapsing made his heart jolt. Without a second thought, he rushed forward, kneeling beside her. Her skin was cold to the touch, her breathing shallow. He could feel the fragility of her condition, and it stirred something protective deep inside him. Scooping her gently into his arms, he carried her through the drizzle, his pace quick yet careful, heading straight for the nearest hospital. He didn't know who she was, or what had brought her to this state, but none of that mattered. At that moment, all that mattered was getting her the help she desperately needed. After what felt like an eternity wrapped in a haze of pain and unconsciousness, Tu Diem's eyelids fluttered open, revealing a sterile hospital room bathed in soft afternoon light. The faint beeping of machines and the subtle scent of antiseptic filled the air. Her body felt weak, every movement a struggle, but the gentle presence beside her caught her attention immediately. Sitting quietly in the chair near her bed was Vuong, the stranger who had found her collapsed on the street. His eyes, dark and warm, held a mixture of relief and concern as he noticed her awakening. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The silence was comforting rather than awkward, like a fragile understanding had already been formed between them. "Welcome back," Vuong finally said, his voice low and steady, careful not to startle her. "You gave me quite a scare." Tu Diem managed a faint smile, her throat dry but her spirit quietly grateful. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I don't know what happened. I just remember feeling so tired, and then everything went dark." Vuong nodded, leaning slightly forward. You were found unconscious near the street. I happened to be walking by and saw you fall. I didn't know who you were, but I couldn't just leave you there." Her eyes searched his face, sensing genuine kindness beneath the stranger's calm exterior. In a world that had recently seemed cold and uncertain, this small act of compassion was a fragile lifeline. She wanted to explain everything, her troubles, the people she had nowhere to turn to, but the words felt too heavy, too tangled to voice just yet. Over the next few days, Vuong stayed close, visiting her at the hospital as often as he could. They talked quietly, sharing small stories about their lives. Vuong learned that Tu Diem was soft-spoken, with a gentle heart that often led her to put others before herself. She spoke about her love for simple things, a warm cup of tea, the sound of rain tapping on a window, the comfort of a quiet evening. Despite her hardships, there was a quiet strength in her, a resilience that Vuong admired deeply. He noticed how she flinched slightly when mentioning certain memories, how her eyes clouded over with unspoken pain. But even then, she carried herself with grace, never asking for pity, only kindness. In those moments, something shifted inside Vuong. What had started as a simple urge to help became a desire to protect, to be a steady presence in her life. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the room with a golden hue, Vuong spoke carefully. "I know this might sound sudden, but if you don't have anywhere to go after you leave here, you're welcome to stay at my place for a while. There's no rush, and no pressure, just a safe space for you to heal." Tu Diem's gaze dropped to her hands, fingers nervously twisting the hospital blanket. The offer stirred a mix of emotions, relief, uncertainty, and a hesitant hope she hadn't felt in a long time. The truth was, she had nowhere else. The people she once trusted had disappeared, and the few familiar places she called home no longer felt safe or welcoming. She looked back up, meeting Vuong's steady eyes. I would like that," she said softly. "Thank you for everything." The next day, Vuong helped her prepare for discharge, accompanying her out of the hospital doors and into the fresh air. The world felt overwhelming but brighter somehow, the burden slightly lighter with someone by her side. As they walked to his car, Tu Diem couldn't help but wonder what the future held, but for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a small smile. Their journey to Vuong's home was quiet but comfortable, filled with gentle conversation and the kind of understanding that doesn't need many words. The house was modest but warm, sunlight streamed through the windows, casting soft patterns on wooden floors and cozy furniture. It was a place that felt safe, a sanctuary she hadn't realized she was desperately seeking. Over the days that followed, Tu Diem slowly regained her strength. Vuong's presence was a soothing balm, his care steady and respectful. He cooked simple meals, helped her with daily tasks, and most importantly, listened. No pressure, no expectations, just kindness and patience. As they spent more time together, the walls Tu Diem had built around herself began to crumble. She laughed softly at Vuong's dry humor, shared stories from her childhood, and found comfort in the quiet moments they spent side by side. Vuong, too, found himself drawn deeper into her world, captivated by her gentle spirit and quiet courage. One evening, as they sat watching the sun set in shades of pink and orange, Vuong reached out, his hand brushing against hers. The contact was tentative but full of meaning, a silent promise of care and companionship. "Tu Diem," he said softly, "I know we've only just met, but I want you to know you're not alone anymore. I want to be here for you, not just now, but as long as you'll let me." Her heart fluttered, a mix of vulnerability and hope blooming within her. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek, grateful for the unexpected kindness that had found her in the darkest moment. In that simple exchange, a new chapter began, one where healing was possible, where trust could grow, and where two souls, once strangers, began to weave their lives together with quiet strength and gentle care. Meanwhile, miles away from the quiet sanctuary where Tu Diem was beginning to heal, Toan's world was spinning on an entirely different axis. Unaware of the fragile threads weaving between strangers elsewhere, he was caught in the tangled web of his own reality, a reality shadowed by Mai Huong's cunning manipulations and hidden agendas. After the accident that left Mai Huong with a painful injury to her leg, Toan's concern for her grew into something deeper, or at least, that was how he perceived it. Despite the warning signs others whispered about Mai Huong's questionable intentions, Toan chose to believe in her innocence. The sight of her wincing in pain, the quiet way she masked discomfort beneath a soft smile, awakened his protective instincts. He spent his days by her side, helping with simple tasks, making sure she didn't feel abandoned in her vulnerable state. Yet, beneath that fragile facade of injury, Mai Huong was anything but helpless. Behind closed doors, her mind was a whirlwind of schemes and calculated moves, each designed to entangle Toan further and dismantle the life he had once shared with Tu Diem. Her wounds were carefully staged, a ploy to evoke sympathy and bind Toan's attention and loyalty. Every smile, every whispered plea for understanding, was a thread in the complex trap she was weaving. Toan, blinded by his own hope and perhaps guilt, failed to see the cracks in her story. He ignored the inconsistencies, the subtle ways she deflected questions and avoided the truth. His heart was wrapped tightly around the idea that love could conquer all, that his care would be the light guiding Mai Huong through whatever darkness she faced. It was a hope born not just of affection but of desperation, a desperate grasp at something stable amid the turmoil that life had become. As days turned into weeks, Toan's world shrank around Mai Huong's presence. Friends and family noticed his growing withdrawal, the distracted way he answered calls and the exhaustion etched into his features. They warned him quietly, cautioning that Mai Huong's motives were suspect, but their words fell on deaf ears. Toan was convinced that he was the only one who could see through her pain, the only one who could heal the wounds she refused to show. All the while, Tu Diem's absence lingered in the shadows of his mind, a ghost of a past he could neither forget nor confront. The void she left was a silent ache, masked by the demands of caring for Mai Huong and the illusions he was weaving around himself. His love, once bright and clear, had become clouded, entangled in lies and half-truths spun by someone who knew exactly how to exploit his weaknesses. Back at Vuong's home, unaware of the storm raging in Toan's life, Tu Diem found solace in the simple kindness that surrounded her. The contrast between her quiet recovery and Toan's chaotic devotion to Mai Huong was stark and cruel, a reminder of how easily trust and love could be twisted into weapons of pain. As Tu Diem slowly reclaimed her strength, a part of her ached for the life she had lost, for the man who had once meant everything to her. Yet, beneath that ache, a new hope was beginning to take root, a hope nurtured by Vuong's gentle presence and the promise of a fresh start. For now, the paths of these three lives ran parallel yet distant, each caught in their own battles of trust, betrayal, and healing. What fate awaited them next was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the delicate threads that connected them would soon pull taut, forcing truths into the light and hearts to choose where their loyalties truly lay.